I just want to say thank you, and particularly thank you in light of the weather. It's kind of a hurricane out there, so we must be doing something right if people brave the elements to come to this. And we very much appreciate it. So thank you. We have a great event tonight. It's going to be divided into a few things. First, we're going to have a fireside chat with Joanne Wilson, who I think everybody here probably knows is a very prominent angel investor and commentator on things tech, things New York, and other related matters. So looking forward to that. Following that, we're going to have a panel on acquiring customers, and that's going to be moderated by Joy Marcus from Blog Lovin'. And after that, we're going to have a panel on building a corporate culture and preserving it, and that's going to be moderated by Angela Lee from 37 Angels. So, just so you know, we're here at Orrick. My name's David Concannon. I'm an attorney with Orrick and our Emerging Companies Group. Our Emerging Companies Group represents technology companies, investment technology companies. We've got over 1,300 technology clients, but so part of what we try to do is foster, the growth and health of the tech economy, particularly here in New York. And we do that in part through our work with clients, but we also do it through events like this, which we do through our Total Access program. Total Access has a few parts. One, we have a bunch of publicly available forums, so particularly for entrepreneurs. I would highly commend that to your attention. They're great forums that kind of show you how startup formation in finance actually works, nuts and bolts. Those are freely available to the public, and we love to share those with entrepreneurs. Second, we do things like teaching sessions. We get together and talk about just the nuts and bolts of forming, financing, selling, buying companies, or other topics that are of interest. And then third, we do events like this, panel discussions, fireside chats, etc. So, our hope is that, we think this is something the community needs, based on a crowd like this tonight, particularly given the weather. It seems like some people agree with us, and we've been really fortunate to get wonderful people like Joanne to participate with us. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Regina from SVB. If Regina's here, if you could over here. Thank you so much for your participation in helping us to get this unbelievable panel together. So without any further ado, Joanne.
All right.
Thank you.
So, in all honesty, I thought this would be a whole room of women. So it's nice to see some men's faces in the crowd. So what I want to talk about today is really about raising money, how difficult it is, and sort of what I've seen in the landscape of the business, and tell some anecdotes and stories about people and the importance of how you go out and pitch to people. So I'm going to start off, which is the definition. Some people ask all the time, what is the definition of a successful entrepreneur? An entrepreneur is a person who organizes and operates a business or businesses, taking on greater than normal financial risks in order to do so. And here's the thing with being entrepreneurs. I don't think entrepreneurship can be taught. I think it can be encouraged. And I'm pretty convinced that the most successful entrepreneurs do not believe that being an entrepreneur is something they should do, but it was something they must do. That is, there a fire in their belly that pushes their desires to chart their own course. And I had read recently, this woman had written a piece, I think it was on Medium, and she was more of an artistic type. And she was at a large company and decided one day, enough already. And she wrote this piece, which was very cool. It was about, should I or must I? And I think that's a really interesting 2 words to use, particularly as an entrepreneur, which is, should I be an entrepreneur or must I be an entrepreneur? Should I start a business or must I start a business? Should I listen to the crowd or must I listen to the crowd? And so, I think that as entrepreneurs, as you start companies, one of the most important things is understanding what the road is ahead of you. I think that many people, when they start out in their companies, they don't think to themselves, wow, I'm gonna go raise some money around this business, and I actually have to create a culture inside my business. I actually have to hire really good people that might be smarter than me, that can do jobs that I hate doing, even though I could do them if I wanted to. That I might have to fire people, that I'm gonna have to go out and raise money again, that this life of mine is gonna take over my entire existence. And I think that when you jump into that game, you have to be thinking about what is the dream? What am I looking for my business? I don't believe the word career exists anymore. I think that there is a blending now of your personal life with your business life because of technology. And so as you make that leap into your businesses, I think the question you should be asking yourself is, what is the life that I want to live? So when I started out in my career, a very, very long time ago, I was convinced that I would go into my first job, and within 3 years, I was going to be running the company. There was going to be no question. I was going to be running a publicly traded company. I've been working since I was 15 years old. I felt like I had done my due, and everyone I had worked for since I was 15, I was smarter than them. So when I got that job out of college, I was going to run Macy's. And a lot changed in Macy's when I was there in the days. They went from a publicly traded company to a private company. And I got to a point in my career there, which was a very short time because I moved up the ladder quickly. And I was ready for the next opportunity on my way to running the company. And a man said to me, who was above me, said, I'm sorry, women don't move as quickly as men in this company. And I thought to myself, well, fuck you. And I quit. And so as I move forward in my life with this entrepreneurial spirit of what am I going to do to blend my personal life with my business life, I had a family. No one really told me that that meant that I'd actually have to get up in the morning and feed those children and take care of those children and clothe those children and make sure they were okay. And I decided, for me, the family was first. Family was first, and my business would be second. And I was always trying to figure out, what's that balance? What's the balance? How can I work like I want to work, but still have this life that I want to have? And then the internet came. And the internet today has changed the world that we live in so that you can have that balance of your life and your business life, because you have access 24/7 and you can be in a virtual world and do what you need to do in order to get your business done. So for me, it was absolutely fantastic. And so I was in the tech community in the 90s, and I was able to basically run and grow a company from my basement in the suburbs in a virtual world while still raising 3 kids. And as life went on, the internet imploded or exploded, whatever you want to call it, in the 90s. And I decided to take a back seat and sort of get off the train again. And what I started doing was I started blogging. And blogging became something, that was really started happening around, when was it? 2000-ish. And I think all the bloggers knew who each other were in the entire world because there weren't many of us doing it, but we did, for me, it was this way to stay connected to this industry, that it was sort of like in a holding pattern where everyone was trying to figure out what was the next thing was going to happen. And so I started blogging, and what happened is I started acquiring essentially a brand new audience. It wasn't the people that I wanted to stay connected to in the tech world from the 90s, because many of them left and never, ever came back. It was a brand new industry of people. And so what happened was I was writing about different topics, and I think a lot of those topics really resonated with women. And so in many ways I became this chick, a magnet. And I heard from women all over the country, particularly in New York, and telling me about their businesses and what they were doing, and I started meeting them. And now this was 8 or 9 years ago, and there actually were many women in the industry sort of like hidden under a stone, But as they started going out and raising money, they were having a very hard time convincing people to understand what they were building. And so my first investment was in a company called Curb Media that I had been watching from afar. It was really the beginnings of Web 2.0 and how content was going to change. And I actually said to my husband, I was obsessed with this company. I was reading everything they had every single day, which is Curb, Eater, and Racked. And he came out and he said, they're looking for money. And I had already met Lockhart Steele. And I said, wow, really? He's like, you should invest in them. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you know what? That could be your next career. You should invest in them. I think you'd be really good at this thing. And I was like, all right. So I invested in Curb Media, a lemonade stand on Monday and a chain needed by Friday. And, fast forward, 8 years later now, I think I'm in over 50 companies. But what I did was I made a very conscious decision to invest in women. So I'd say almost 70% of the businesses that I'm invested in have either women entrepreneurs or women are the co-founders of those companies. And the reason I made that decision is that there are very few women investors out there. And as well as I think that we were moving into a new world where a lot of these businesses that were being built, women understand the need, women understand the niche, but men really didn't. I don't think that was a conscious decision. I was like, I don't want to invest in a woman. I just think it was more like they didn't understand their businesses. Because I am a big believer is if you got a good business and it's making a lot of money and you have a lot of traction, you will get money. But again, remember that there are money to a VC is $1 billion business. Money to an angel or a micro VC is a very different business. It could be a $50 million or $100 million business. And the great thing about today in starting businesses is there are all different pockets of money that there was not available 10 years ago. VCs aren't putting any more money out today than they were putting out 10 years ago. There's more money at the mid-level and the lower level. So there was an article recently, I don't know if any of you saw this, it was in the Atlantic about the confidence gap. Did any of you see that article? It just went flying around Twitter and the internet. So evidence shows that women are less assured than men, and that to succeed, confidence matters such as competence. And I have to agree, it does. And the one thing that has been fascinating to me in sort of like a sociology test is to see the difference between men and women in regards to raising their money and building their businesses. And so I see men who come and pitch and they're so confident and their numbers are so full of shit. But, and women come and they're, they know what they want. And of course, it's a very different conversation with me because, I can connect with them at a different level and we can have conversations and there's no walls. But they're very honest about their numbers. They're very conservative about their numbers. And it's a very different conversation. So I'm going to tell you about two women who went out and raised money. And one of the frustrations they've had, but I think it's a learning experience too. And even as a man, you can take something from this. And so one of the women was having a really hard time raising money. She was very frustrated by it. And I've said to many women, what goes on in those meetings when you go and pitch the people on the other side of the table? Like, I know when you pitch me, how you pitch, but what goes on when you pitch there? What's happening in these meetings? And so one woman said, if I stand up, I'm too aggressive. If I sit down, I'm too demure. And there's like no balance. I don't know what to do. And, and many of them are like not sure that I'm the person to run this kind of business. And so I said to her, do yourself a favor. And I said, this is a terrible thing to say. But when you go out and pitch, think like a man. I want to be sitting on your shoulder and saying to you, be bold, be strong, and go out there and ask for the money. You built this amazing business. Tell them so. She's like, okay. She goes to the next meeting, room full of guys, and she's pitching and kind of ends, and they're like, uh-huh. And then she looks at them and she goes, so? are you in or are you out? And they're like, no, we're totally in. And she's like, she walked out, she's like, oh my God, that was it. That was the moment. And she's like, it just turned everything around. And then I had another woman who went out and pitched. And again, once you raise that money and your business starts moving forward, your confidence factor rises to a whole nother level. But she had gone out and pitched money, and she went to see a VC, who I actually know very well. And he said to her, wow, this is a great business. But you know what's going to happen? Is you're going to probably, build this business, and when it gets to be like worth $10 million, someone's going to offer you 10, and you're going to leave and say, fine. And then I'm not going to make the money I want to make, so I'm not going to invest in you. And I said to her, let me guess, you fell back on data. She says, yeah. I said, you know what? If someone like that says that to you on the other side of the table, you just say, thank you, goodbye. Because you don't want that person invested in your business. You want someone who believes in what you're doing, there's an immediate connection, you can talk about big picture things, and you're like, I want to marry this person, because the pitch is all about dating. And so for women, and not so much men, they need to stop saying I'm sorry, and they need to be bold, and they need to be powerful, and they have to say to themselves, I built this business, and I'm going to find someone who believes in my business and wants to give me money. On the flip side, I think this is a really important story because as we've seen some really crazy things go on in company cultures in the last week, is that it's important that men come to the party when it comes to women. And what I mean by that is, there's been an issue that went around the internet a while ago where this young woman, these guys were making fun of women at a tech event, and she was mortified and she tweeted it out, and these men were called in, and I'm sure that all the men around them heard that, but no one came to say anything. And so a woman I know who graduated 2 or 3 years ago from Cornell, there's a women's entrepreneur class. And what this professor does is have women in the area come in who are, like vice president of a bank or, president of an insurance company. I mean, major women in major jobs come in and speak to the class. And so this one woman came in who was the president of a bank in upstate New York. And she said to the class, I just want you to know, as you go out into the working world, that you shouldn't be that honest about what goes on in your personal life and your business. So I have 2 children, and when I want to go watch my children play soccer or whatever it is, what I say is, I have to take my kids to the doctor. Or, I have this thing I have to do, because someone's sick, or, I have to pinch in because something happened, instead of being honest. And she said to me, I was kind of scared, because I was like, wow, when you're in college, it's this sort of like idyllic place that you just don't really understand what happens out in the work world. And I said to her, that's ridiculous. Like, you shouldn't have to do that. You should be completely honest about your life, where you're going, what you need, what your desires are, because if you're doing a good job and you're confident in yourself, those are the environments that you want to work in. And so this goes to the point where the men in that particular office were like, yeah, I'm going to my son's basketball game. And everyone's like, oh my God, you're so amazing because you go see your son play basketball. And so I think it comes down to is that it is important in this culture where there's all this conversation about there's not enough women entrepreneurs, or there's all this, sexism that's taking place in the office, or things that are, said that are not really, that might be taken out of context or right in context, that it is important as men in this industry to also say, enough is enough, and that is not the way that we behave. We are all equals here, we are entrepreneurs here, we are all smart people here, and we are doing our job. And until that happens, there will be no changes in the tech industry. And if we are believers that the tech industry is how we've changed the world, and I can tell you that the mid-90s, the one thing I always believed about the internet is the internet was going to change the way that we live our lives, is that our businesses and the way that we behave should also be changed the way that we live our lives, because as a community, we should show the rest of the world that that is not the way to behave. So I'm going to talk about one more thing in regards to raising money, is that it's really important that when you raise money, you're completely transparent with your investors. They want to hear good things and they want to hear bad things. To come to them with only the bad things is going to get you nowhere. You need to tell them when the things are good are happening as well as the things are bad that are happening. And I think that you have to understand the value of an investor who's been through many of the things that you have been many, many times. So I have a company that I'm invested in, and they really didn't ask any advice. And when they would do is ask advice, like, well, what, I've actually seen that 3 times, don't waste your money. And then they went back and did it. And then what happened is that they spent all this money over a year after, 2 really good investors said, don't do that, don't do that. I mean, I am a big believer at the end of the day, it is your company and you should make your own decisions. The investors should not be making your decisions for you. But there is value in asking those questions and helping you not make the same mistakes that other people have made in the past, and will save you a lot of time, energy, and money. So in the end of the conversation, I just want to say, it is important to listen to your gut, stand up for what you think is right, and think as an entrepreneur, what is it you want from your business? You can dream big, you can dream small, but it is important to dream in order to create your own personal success. Thank you.